The body is a very complex matrix of systems which work individually and collectively. When you get sick and experience some symptoms, how does your doctor tell what is wrong, considering that the body is fully covered with the skin? By looking at the symptoms. The same symptom in one person can mean a different illness in another person. This is the dilemma that is facing health practitioners every day. The headache of diagnosis. In this show, we present you with a medical intuitive who transcends the barriers of diagnosis and treatment and make this look so easy. Watch the show and be amazed.
I am a medical intuitive. I use alternative techniques to diagnose and treat illnesses.
According to into yabo research yabo ayikho treatment for lung disease.
This is a God-given gift which is coupled with my training and acumen for physiology and anatomy. Over the years, I've successfully diagnosed and treated illnesses that have defied even the best of some of the medical practices. We all have our life purpose, and this one is mine. Welcome to Dr. Alternative Show. I've got Andiswa with me. Can you greet the viewers, Andiswa?
Greetings to all the viewers, and thank you for having me on the show, Thembi.
You're welcome. Today, before we start with what we're going to cover today, I would like to reiterate the importance of our approach. That is, we always move from the person to the symptom. Remember?
Yeah.
Our slogan is from the person to the symptom. Okay, so, and in all the shows that we're going to be presenting to you, we're going to be showing you how this occurs and how important it is in determining how the person responds to the treatment or what kind of treatment is appropriate for the condition. There are many women who are suffering from chronic abdominal pains, and the assumption, because of their biological makeup, their anatomy, the assumption is always that is because their problems are coming from the uterine area. And yet there is a vast difference or variety of illnesses that are triggered by the anatomy in the abdominal area. Your bladder is there, your small intestines are there, your uterus is there, your pancreas is there. So there is a whole range of organs that fall below or in your abdominal area. So for many practitioners to assume that because you're a female and you experience pains in your abdominal area, then that means it's because the problem is originating from your uterus is a very dangerous assumption. Okay, we're going to be presenting you in our show today with two women that presented with chronic abdominal pains, and you'll see for yourselves how vastly different the illnesses were. Please take a look. Now, if you look at the first one, you can see that she was hospitalized because of the excruciating pain that she could not endure at all. Okay. And when she was in hospital, they ran a number of tests, and they ended up suspecting that it's probably the appendix, so she probably had appendicitis. But even that was inconclusive, although they never did a surgery to examine the appendix itself. But because of the symptoms that they know that it should be tender, the abdominal area should be tender on the side of the appendix. So some of the telltale processes that they usually follow did not confirm that it was appendix. So then they ended up referring her to gynecologist because they thought it could be emanating from the uterine area. So, but even there, when the gynecologist tested her, she could not pick up anything that gave her answers, and yet the pain was maddening. Okay. So what they ended up doing, they ended up giving her some treatment that would numb the pain. Okay. So it did numb the pain, but the pain was consistently there. Particularly when she was urinating, she said she actually dreaded having to go to relieve herself because of the pain that was there. So when she came to me, it was because she had exhausted all the various practitioners so that she could find answers, and not only answers, but to find a relief. Okay. And as usual, I scanned her, but then as you will see, the causes for the pain, they were kidney stones. Okay, so in my scan, what I picked up was that firstly she had kidney stones. Okay, so that is where the excruciating pain was coming from. But the problem was not coming from the kidney per se. The problem was actually coming from the thyroid. But I'm going to show you how I connected the dots to end up finding creating a total profile and looking at the history of the things that she was experiencing other than just the excruciating pain. Because there were other symptoms, but it's just that she never realized that there was a connection between those symptoms, and also she never took them as something serious because it was not like paining or stuff like that. So as I go through the process of diagnosing her, you will actually see for yourself what I mean when I say it's very important to come from the person to the illness. Okay. Now let's dissect the situation or the diagnosis of this lady. Okay. Now, starting with the kidney stones, some people probably are wondering what are kidney stones. Kidney stones are actually stones, as I said, but it's stones that are formed because of the calcium crystals, because of the minerals. Now remember, we all know calcium, that is the mineral that we get from food, from certain types of food like your beetroot, your spinach, and your dairy products, and it's known to be food for your skeletal system, food for the bones, food for the teeth, okay, even for the tissues around the bones. Now, that calcium is very important for our skeletal system. But now that calcium is supposed to be absorbed, and any excess of that calcium presents a problem, and that ends up creating calcium or creating stones. Okay, I'm not going to dwell a lot in that because I will be discussing with Andy, so I saw some of your questions will actually be answered as we go along. But I just want you to understand that kidney stones are literally, it's actually crystals. So if you were to actually manage to cut open and take it out, you'll actually feel that it is hard like a stone. And now you can imagine that when it goes through the blood vessel or the tissue, it's supposed to create that kind of pain because it's actually a stone. Okay. So when we come after the break, I will talk more about it. So let's go for a quick break.
Are you sitting with an illness with no diagnosis, and every doctor in town does not know what is wrong with you? Don't throw in a towel. There's hope for you. St. Mary's Alternative Clinic is a clinic with divine guidance that can do what doctors can't do. Make a booking and you won't be sorry.
Welcome back. We are talking about kidney stones in relation to the pain that the client was experiencing and how they get formed and what do they actually mean. But maybe because the subject of kidney stones is so vast and most of you have been hounding us with questions on how we can help them in this case. And maybe I will go to attending to your questions, and that will help us to guide the process from here.
Okay, so your first question here, Thembi, is talking about how kidney stones are maybe automatically assumed to be a kidney problem. But you seem to be mentioning oxalate levels and thyroid. So can you connect the dots just to make us understand how the kidney stones are not coming from the kidneys per se?
Well, actually they do, but not entirely. Okay, that's why they're called kidney stones. They do come from the kidney stones. But let me talk about oxalate levels. Okay. And how the thyroid links to the kidney stones. If you remember when we were doing our previous show where we were talking about the calcification, when we were talking about that girl that had serious deposits on her skin and she had really badly looking skin and that was looking whitish. So I actually covered a little bit on calcium. That calcium, which we know comes from the food that we eat and which we know is food for the skeletal system. I mentioned that there are 3 organs that are involved in the processing and absorption of calcium. It's the thyroid, it's the small intestines, and it's the kidneys. Okay, so those 3 organs, if you've got issues with one of them, you might have issues with calcium absorption. But now, the thyroid, where does oxalate come in? Because it's very important to understand the oxalate levels. Okay. Now, oxalate is a chemical that we don't really need, but it's very important for plants because that's the kind of chemical that actually controls the absorption of calcium. Okay. Now, remember, we get our nutrients from plants. So we are all part of the ecosystem. They provide us with what we need, and we provide them with what they need, like carbon dioxide, which they use, and they give us oxygen. But there's a whole lot of other chemical processes that connect us with the plant kingdom, and we all form part of the ecosystem. So calcium that we get from food is also used by plants. Okay. Now, those plants use oxalate. Okay. But us as human beings, we don't really need it as a nutrient. Okay. But it's there. We do have it because we eat a lot of food that has got this chemical. Okay. But now, once we have it in excess, it only becomes a problem when we've got it in excess, okay, because it creates kidney stones. But now, how does it connect to the kidneys and how does it connect to the thyroid gland? Now, the thyroid gland, firstly, now we must understand the thyroid gland is up there, okay. Now, the thyroid gland is a gland that is used by the body for metabolism. Okay, so it provides us with hormones that help us to metabolize food that we eat. Now, metabolism, most people know what metabolism is, although they think it's just to digest food. Metabolism is not digestion of food. Metabolism is the conversion. Of course, digestion is part of it, but it's the conversion of food into energy. How well does your body convert, at what speed does it convert food into energy? Because when we eat so that we can use that food to bring us energy. If you remember also when we were talking about coronavirus in one of the shows, when we were talking about coronavirus, we also mentioned how the digestive system end up affecting the absorption of food, okay, and even water. So thyroid, therefore, is very important in this chemical, in providing hormones that help us to metabolize food. And also, the thyroid is also very important for the heart function. Okay, so you'll find that people that have got thyroid problems tend to have heart problems. In some cases, you might find a person has got heart problems, but is not known that because of the thyroid is a problem. So it's therefore very important for that. Now, what does that thyroid do as far as calcium is concerned? It produces hormones that help us to process calcium. Now, calcium must be chemical processed and must be absorbed because the skeletal system needs that. Okay, so and it's the thyroid that does that to regulate the absorption of calcium. But then the small intestines. Now remember also when we were talking about about coronavirus, we spoke about the small intestines, about the importance of absorbing food, that you may digest food in the stomach, but if your absorption or your small intestines have got issues, maybe you even have leaky gut, then you'll have issues with absorption, including these chemicals, because these chemicals like your calcium, your iron and all that, it's the small intestines that are responsible for that. So now that's how you connect the dot. Okay, so now here's the thyroid, which is providing you with hormones that help us, among other things other than just metabolism, that help us as far as calcium is concerned to chemically process calcium and also to absorb it. So now, because of oxalate levels that are high, then you will find that you end up having issues with forming kidney stones. And when we come after the break, we're going to talk more about this. Let's go for a short break.
Are you sitting with an illness with no diagnosis, and every doctor in town does not know what is wrong with you? Don't throw in a towel. There's hope for you. St. Mary's Alternative Clinic is a clinic with divine guidance that can do what doctors can't do. Make a booking and you won't be sorry.
Back, we are still talking about connecting the dots of having kidney stones, not just being a problem of kidneys, but being a problem of elevated oxalate levels and also the thyroid. Okay, so it's kind of, maybe it may sound a bit complicated at this stage, but by the time we finish this part, I'm sure you'll be understanding. So all I'm saying therefore is that if you've got thyroid problems, that make you battle to process calcium, then that calcium is going to end up crystallizing and forming kidney stones. Okay, so sometimes calcium, when you've got too much calcium, it does not only become kidney stones. It may also be like I was talking about the skin. You may have calcium crystals in other areas. You can have it in your carotid, which may, some people who've got epileptic issues, you find that it's because they've got calcification in their carotid. So it does not only mean when you've got excess calcium, it will form kidney stones. It depends on where are they deposited. Okay, so once they heat up your renal system, then they will create kidney stones. But the problem is not just emanating from the kidneys, but from your thyroid as well. And also the oxalate levels. Now the oxalate levels, as I mentioned earlier, we don't really need that chemical. It's used more by the plants, but it creates problems for us when we've got it in excess because it makes us form those stones. So that's where the connection is. The thyroid, which makes hormones to regulate calcium absorption and processing, which if it's too much, then it will push up your oxalate levels, and then oxalate levels that are elevated, they also create kidney stones. So I don't know if it's a bit clearer.
It is clearer. I'm sure the viewers are happy with the explanation there. The next one is talking about the abdominal pain and why it's actually in the front side and not in the kidney area.
You mean in this particular client?
Yes.
Okay. Now, remember the renal system. Now, if we're talking the renal area, okay, the renal area, it's your back, but it forms. It's like a belt that comes to the front. Remember, you've got a bladder here in the center, but then it connects. So these sides we call them flank. It's a flank area. So it's still part of your kidneys, of your renal system, of your kidney area. So some people you find, as a result, because they tend to have the problem on the side, they never connect it to be linked to the renal area. Because remember, also particularly if you're female, you might even, that might also come from your fallopian tubes because they are more to the side than in the center. So that's what happens. So when you feel it on the side or both sides, it doesn't mean it's out of context. It's still within the context of the renal, or the line or the territory of your renal system. Okay, so that's why she could have felt it this side. It could have been this side. It could have even been on the back. Okay, so the back, that's where people know to be. That's where your kidneys are located, a little bit higher, but more slightly on the side. So that's why you find that she actually experienced a pain. It could have been here, it could have been there, it could have been there. So it was not lost that it was located in that particular area. Okay.
Okay, so what causes the iodine? You mentioned something about oxalate levels. Is the iodine linked to that, or is it linked to the thyroid?
Iodine is linked to the thyroid.
Okay.
Okay. Now remember that the function of the thyroid, as I've mentioned, is to make hormones that help us with metabolism and also to help with the heart functioning. Okay. But then the iodine is made. I mean, the iodine is the one that helps in the function in carrying out of that function. So when your iodine levels are low, it's actually creating problems for your thyroid because it needs that iodine to make those hormones. So when it's low, then it's a battle to make those hormones, and those hormones help with metabolism and heart functioning. Okay. So, but it needs iodine to make those hormones. So when the levels are low, you might have problems of these kidney stones, like I've mentioned. But you'll also have problems. Most people that have got problems with thyroid have got heart problems. Okay. Now, if, for instance, I can go back to this lady, there is something that I asked her. Okay, because I realized when I was scanning her, I realized that her iodine levels were low and her heart was operating on the congestive, on the heart failure. Okay, it was actually very low. So, which would make her to fall asleep very easily. And she actually concurred, and she said she would be sitting in front of TV and she's gone. She won't even know When did she fall asleep? Such that her children used to say TV is watching her other than her watching television. And she was always fighting with her husband because the husband thinks she's making up, to pretend to be sleepy when it's time to go to bed, as if she's avoiding him. Okay. Meanwhile, she would not even realize that she has fallen asleep. So she said her problem of sleepiness, but they never thought it had anything to do with being sick. They thought she's just exhausted. So, and as a result, she ended up taking a whole lot of vitamin supplements to try and beef up her energy levels. But she said the problem never went away. Okay. So, because the heart was affected because of the iodine levels. And then she went for testing. Okay, because she realized that now it was not just affecting her when she was just sitting in front of TV. But even at work, it started affecting her at work. She was sleepy at work, and even when she's driving, she would fall asleep on the steering wheel, particularly if the car is not moving. So it was starting to affect her functionality. That's what made her to go to have it tested. But now when they tested her, they noticed that her sodium, that's what they picked up. They never picked up anything about the thyroid. Okay, they picked up about the sodium, that she was losing her sodium, which is another chemical that she was losing it too fast. But we'll talk more about that after the breaks. Let us go for a quick break.
Are you sitting with an illness with no diagnosis, and every doctor in town does not know what is wrong with you? Don't throw in a towel. There's hope for you. St. Mary's Alternative Clinic is a clinic with divine guidance that can do what doctors can't do. Make a booking and you won't be sorry.
Welcome back. We're still covering the question of iodine levels and how they affect one's health and how they relate to the thyroid. Okay. Now, remember, we're talking about a person who landed up in hospital because she had excruciating in her abdominal area. And yet, when we trace it back, we find the culprit is actually coming from the thyroid. And now, when we looked beyond just the problem of abdominal pain, and I was asking her if she felt sleepy, that was another problem. But that was the problem that she had experienced in the past, and then it got sorted in a way, if I may put it that way, because they gave a treatment that kind of regulated the sodium loss or excretion that she was experiencing. But now that problem was still an underlying problem. They never fixed it. Hence, I asked her about it, and she had never shared it with me. Okay. So now I'm coming back to the question of iodine, that iodine is very, very important in everyone's health, be it female or male, because it is used by the thyroid to make hormones that are responsible for our metabolism and also for the heart function. So that is why you need to take very serious attention to your iodine levels. Okay.
Okay, now how would one know, Thembi, when the levels have dropped? How does it affect the health? How does it,
Okay. Now, when the levels have dropped, it will present as a range of various symptoms, like this one. Now, this one that we're talking about, she presented with with kidney stones. Some other people you might find that, like this sleepiness that I'm talking about. Others may be very irritable. Others, the heart may be pumping like anything. I've had a lot of people that says, hey, leaning all the time, as if I'm going to hear something wrong, meaning the heart palpitations. Okay, so there are people who are forever having heart palpitations and are on medication, but those heart palpitations, they never go away. That's linked to your iodine or to your thyroid problems. So it will present as a range of symptoms that you may not even begin to think that they are linked to this, like I'm talking about this one. So it's very difficult if you are going to chase symptoms. That takes us back again to what I keep on emphasizing. That if you're going to go and you're going to chase symptoms, check the kidney stones or the abdominal pain, or check the heart, chase that the heart that is racing, or chase the sleepiness, or chase the irritability, you're never going to get to the thyroid, because it's hidden there. So, which is emphasizing my approach there, for that it's so important to move from the person, because that's how we ended up finding what was wrong with the lady. So for me, my only advice would be, I can only talk about us, that we can scan you and then we'll be able to tell you
what's really
happening. The thyroid and your iodine levels. Okay.
What is the best diet when one is presented with these symptoms?
Diet is very, very important. Okay, now let me say diet in what, like for instance, when we talk about treatment in this lady, I'm going to show you how diet was my number one question as to what are you taking. Okay, because now remember, thyroid creates its own problems because of those iodine levels, but oxalate levels, they are not, they are standing on their own, because it's, like I said, it's a chemical that is there in your body, which the body does not really need if you're a human being, but because it is linked to calcium. Okay, because calcium in plants, it is absorbed, or the absorption is controlled by oxalate, so its tentacles are still within calcium. Okay, so now, let me make, for instance, an example. A person who will say, hey, I like eating spinach. Okay, now those people that have got issues with oxalate levels, they shouldn't be eating foods that are high in oxalate chemical. Okay, like your spinach, your beetroot, your nuts, those type of food. Okay, but how are you going to know? How are you going to know? Maybe you like nuts, particularly almond and cashews. They are big on oxalate. So how are you going to know? You like beetroot. Beetroot is always encouraged to be very good for your blood. Okay, so some people will juice their beetroot and all that. Spinach is always encouraged for iron. Okay, so how are you going to know that in your case it's a problem? Okay, so but I will come back to talking more about about diet when I talk about the treatment for this lady. But the important thing is, the only advice that I can say would help in a situation like this is for you to have a general testing, because remember, our scanning is not specific to a particular area. Like if, for instance, you've got problems with a headache, then you find you're going to do a scan of the brain, or with us, it scans the whole body. Okay, we use FIT because FIT connects to every organ in the body. So it will show us where the problems are lying and how that one has led to that and that and that. So that is how it operates in our case. But now, besides the problem of thyroid, now you asked earlier on that you would have thought that the problem of kidney stones would be squarely a problem of kidneys. Okay, and I indicated that it is, but not entirely, not solely for kidneys. Now, maybe a person might wonder, if therefore you have issues with thyroid and calcification and all that, and end up having kidney stones, do kidneys get affected at all at some stage? Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. Not they are affected by kidney stones, because remember, kidney stones are an alarm, an alarm to say something is a problem with your kidney area. Okay. So, but I'm going to explain when we come after the break. I'm going to explain how kidneys come into the picture in a situation like this. So let's go for an ad break. Welcome back. The last question was, how do kidneys come into the picture, okay, in a situation like this of kidney stones? Now, let me say this before I come to that. Now, people that have got renal failure who end up attending dialysis, it's not everybody who will experience kidney problems, for instance, maybe with urination, maybe the urine is smelly or it's foamy or it's frequent and all that. You find other people don't experience those things at all. Maybe they go for a general checkup, and then when they check your electrolytes, then they find, your electrolytes balance is totally out. Now, what does that mean? It means, now remember, the kidney purifies the blood by filtering. That's why you find that people that have got kidney failure, even if they go for dialysis, now remember, when you go for dialyzing sessions, that means your kidneys have packed up. They're not eliminating for you at all. So that's why the machine becomes your kidney, your artificial kidneys. But now you will notice that people that go for dialysis, you will find that they tend to be very dark in complexion. You find a person has been light, has been a fair complexion person, but when they get to that, when the kidneys have packed up, you'll find that they tend to have very darkish complexion. Why is that? Because even though the kidneys, the dialyzing machines are helping with filtering the blood, it's not doing all the functions of the kidneys. So it can only do so much. Because remember, you'll find maybe a person must go twice a week or 3 times a week. Now, in between, what is filtering that? So that is why you find that even though it tries to a great extent to purify the blood, it can only do so much. And also, even though those machines are helping with filtering the blood, but they cannot take over the function of hormones, okay? Because remember, the kidneys are also responsible for making hormones as well, okay? That help, for instance, with the formation of blood. They will instruct the platelets, the blood cells, red blood cells in bone marrow, and say it's time to make red blood cells. So they are also involved in things like that, okay? So now, therefore, when you've got problems of kidneys that have packed up, the filtering process is badly compromised. It's almost non-existent, okay? Which means those electrolytes that you're supposed to filter, those calcium, those magnesium, those sodium, those potassium, you are not filtering them. So which is what we talk about electrolytes balance, because the kidneys do that function. So now when that is not happening, that is an alarm to say, hey, your kidneys have got issues. So you'll find there are people who will go to hospital or to go for a checkup, not realizing that there's any problem with their kidneys, that they've packed up so badly that it's almost they need dialysis. Not because they're experiencing anything, but because of just those electrolyte balance. Because then, if they're not filtering those things, a mess is being created in your body. So you're sitting with all that debris of those minerals. So therefore, when I'm coming to kidneys, therefore, is that it's not just calcium that is a problem or a function of the kidneys to filter. There's a whole range of other electrolytes, other chemical or minerals that need to be filtered by the kidneys. But then if that is not happening, then those kidneys are affected. So it's a catch-22 really. Yeah, it becomes a catch-22 because if they cannot filter, they're affected. And if, it becomes a catch-22. So that's what happens. So when you've got kidney stones, even though the main problem may not be coming from them, but they themselves are victims because there's too much calcium that is being dumped, and they end up being victims because they cannot filter as much as the dumping is occurring. And also remember, like I was talking about calcium in the previous shows where I said those minerals are transported by the heart. So if the heart that pumps the blood has got issues, then you'll find that the dumping may occur anyway, like I was indicating with the case of the skin. So it's all connected. You find this one affects that and that affects the other, but they're all linked. Okay, so which is why it's so important. I'll keep on taking us back to, you can't look at the symptom. You've got to look at the person, because then you'll be able to trace all these areas that are affected from that one source or that one cause. Okay. Now, the question of oxalate. Okay. Besides the oxalate levels that you might find that you're picking up because you're eating food that is very rich, there is a congenital problem of oxalate where you find that there are some children that are born with that as a congenital disorder. So that's the condition which causes them to keep very, very high levels of oxalate. Not because they've eaten food that is high in that, but because of their disorder in those processes. So they end up, and you find that most of those of children with hyperoxaluria, they tend not to live too long because the kidneys get very badly affected and the liver gets very badly affected. I've treated a few. I've had some successes with some, but I've had, but where we have to monitor, because it's not a case of just saying, well, it's there are cases that have responded very well, but there are cases that have succumbed to the condition and end up dying, and you find that they end up forming stones, big stones, all the time. You find that you may be able to melt them and try and neutralize and watch the diet, and they may be fine for a while, but then the congenital disorder, hyperoxaluria, creates the gallstone. The kidney stones again. Then, so it's a very nasty condition for children who are born with that disorder. Okay, so let's go for a quick break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. When I went for a break, I was explaining about the problems of oxalate levels that are elevated and how they create kidney stones, but also mentioning that there are children that are born with this as a congenital disorder, and they are subjected to persistent formation of kidney stones, and in most cases they don't have a big quality of life, but now let us go to treatment. Okay, because now here is a person, because I want you to map it out in your imagination. Here is a person who walks in my rooms, who've been hospitalized, who's still sitting with pain, and who's scared to even go and urinate, who's saying, help me. And here I say, okay, let me look at what's happening. And then I trace it back from the thyroid, iodine levels, how it affects the heart, and kidneys, and kidney stone formation. Now, how do I move there? Okay. Now, starting with this person, like I promised I was going to cover the diet, the first thing that I said she must tell me was to give me a dietary list. What does she eat on a daily basis? Okay. And because this is someone who was quite health conscious, so she had a very standard diet that she was following, like what she eats in the morning and what she takes it with. And in her list, I removed a lot of things. Okay, like for instance, she was big on beetroot. Okay, so she said she was making beetroot juice every day because the understanding it's good for the blood, which is true, but it's got high oxalate levels. So I said, take out beetroot. She was big on spinach. Okay, she was big on nuts. She was big on sweet potato. Okay, so all those things were bad, really very bad for her. Okay, even though they are very healthy. I remember when I removed quite a, she said, oh, there goes my diet, because this is what I do. I follow every day, and I so I looked at the diet first, and then I removed all those diets, those foods that are high in oxalate, and then I gave a list of things that are very good for lowering. Now, which is what I want to emphasize, that when we treat, we're not just looking at your illness and isolate it from your diet, because you can't. Diet forms part of you. That's how a man has been created. God has created us to be to be fed by food, to be healed by herbs. So we're part of nature. So that's why you can't look at the person and not look at the diet. So that's what happened in her case. So first thing, before I could say, let me melt the stones. Okay, so was to look at the diet. Then I said, this is the diet that you must follow. Of course, I looked at all of other things as well, besides the oxalate-rich foods. And then I melted the kidney stones. Now, people think it's a joke when we say you don't need to go for surgery when you've got kidney stones, even gallstones. You don't need to go for surgery, because we've got protocols that soften the gallstones, and we've got protocols that melt the kidney stones. Okay, so I gave a treatment that melted those, and you will be shocked how fast it works. That within days, those kidney stones have melted. Okay, so I gave her that. I worked on that heart. Okay, I had to work on that heart because the heart was, like I was saying, that she was sleepy all the time, and that heart was having issues. So we worked on the heart and also beefed up the iodine level. So I had to give her iodine. Okay, now with iodine, a person maybe might wonder, do you have to take iodine as just to maintain the levels? You can't just take it, because when iodine levels are high, that's a problem. When they are low, that's a problem. So you need to take it such that you help your thyroid to take over the function and run with it. So that's what happened in this case. We sorted out the iodine levels, and we also sorted out the thyroid. Okay, because with the thyroid, because it was working low, so we ended up working on thyroid. Now, even with the thyroid, in some cases you find that they will have a hyperactive thyroid, in others a very low, what we call hypothyroidism. So even there, we are in a position to say that, in your case, it's high, then we'll give appropriate protocols, and in your case, it's low, then we'll give appropriate protocols. So we did that, and then we worked on the kidneys as well, because we had to beef up those kidneys, not because the kidney stones had damaged them, but because the whole thyroid, iodine, calcium formation had created those problems. So we gave a treatment that also helped them. And she was sorted. Voila. No surgery, nothing. The pain was gone. And she said, you have no idea how relieved I feel now when I want to pee. Because it was like big torture. I want to pee, and then I'm moving up and down, that, oh my goodness, how am I going to stop this urine from wanting to come out? But she said I ended up, with the treatment, all that was sorted. Now, do you see? There was no uterus. There was nothing that had to do with her feminine or with her female anatomy. So everything had to do with the thyroid and how it connected to oxalate and calcium and calcification and kidney and all that to end up giving her a relief on her condition. So that is what I'm talking about there for that. When you chase symptoms, because that's what was happening, that's why she was not finding any relief. Because if you look at that abdominal area, you're never gonna. How are you gonna trace it back to all these things that I'm talking about? You know, so you move from the person to the symptom, and that's the only way you will be able to do a proper treatment and do it permanently. Because even if now, because now that she knows that she's got issues with, because also if you treat in separation from the diet, and she would have continued with her beetroot and her spinach and all those things that are highly recommended as good food, she would have continued. But because of our advice, she was in a position now to change her diet, which corrected her thing permanently.
Do the symptoms come back if the diet changes?
Of course, okay. Definitely. They will come back. So that is why it's important, because, and you'll find that in some cases, I will tell people, don't take this, don't take that. And as particularly, now take this one, maybe she likes nuts. And she feels, oh, no, now it's sorted, maybe I can take nuts. And then after that, she comes back again. Maybe she might not come back with kidney stones. She might come back with something else. Maybe that heart is racing now. It doesn't mean it will always present in the same symptoms that you experienced then. It may present as something else. Maybe the heart, instead of feeling sleepy, the heart is racing like anything, and you don't know that it's still linked to the same problem. So that's what happens. That is what happens. So, but symptoms do come back if you fail to observe those things that I had advised you about. So in a nutshell, that is how we dealt with this problem. So if among you viewers there are people that have got issues, even if you don't have issues, come and have your iodine levels tested. Come and have your thyroid tested, because you may be experiencing symptoms that you don't realize are serious, but you don't know that it's because of your iodine levels or your thyroid. So what I'm encouraging you, come and have because there are people that have ended up having cancer, thyroid cancer, and people that end up having goiter. You know, when the thyroid ends up becoming too big, and then they end up going for operation, because if it's too big, it might block the trachea, and it may affect your breathing. So you may actually choke from the suffocation because the goiter is too big. Then they end up having to remove it. But then how do you survive without your thyroid gland? Because there are people who are on persistent hormonal supplements, thyroxine supplements, because the thyroid has been removed. So you don't have to go that route, because even there, we will be able to give you protocols that will shrink that thyroid that has become big, because we've got protocols that shrink growth, okay, whether it's cancerous or it's because of what, we've got protocols for that. So don't run for a knife. Try and come to us first, because we'll be in a position to help you with those things and be able to track them, trace them back, and come and follow them up to where you find you are totally healed. So stay blessed, and thank you for watching. And remember, St. Mary's Clinic, St. Mary's Alternative Clinic is your clinic that will give you answers where no one has managed to succeed. And thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Are you sitting with an illness with no diagnosis, and every doctor in town does not know what is wrong with you? Don't throw in a towel. There's hope for you. St. Mary's Alternative Clinic is a clinic with divine guidance that can do what doctors can't do. Make a booking and you won't be sorry.